She stood by the doorway, holding 2 plates of warm food, her hands trembling slightly as the steam curled upward and disappeared into the air. Her children, now teenagers, sat in the living room with glowing screens illuminating their faces, earbuds in, laughter shared with unseen friends. She cleared her throat gently, her voice soft but filled with longing as she whispered, "Dinner is ready." The words slipped into the room but collided with a wall of indifference. No heads lifted, no eyes met hers. It was as though she had become a shadow in her own home, present but unseen. A sharp memory stabbed at her heart. Years ago, these same children had clung to her legs at the school gate, refusing to let go, begging for just one more bedtime story. Back then, her voice had been their comfort, her presence their safety. Now her words dissolved into silence. She placed the plates carefully on the table, taking a step back as if distancing herself from rejection. Her tired eyes glistened with unspoken sorrow, the weight of years of sacrifice pressing heavily on her shoulders. And yet, she did not raise her voice, nor did she scold. Instead, she whispered inwardly, "Patience is stronger than anger. Love lasts longer than pride." Those words became her anchor. Though invisible to them in that moment, she refused to let bitterness take root. In the stillness of that night, with only the faint ticking of a clock for company, she made a choice. She would not demand respect through harshness. She would wait, she would endure, and she would let love speak for her in ways louder than words ever could. And that quiet choice would soon alter everything. The mother rose before the first hint of dawn, when the world was still quiet and her children were wrapped in their dreams. The air was cool, her body aching from yesterday's labor, but her heart carried a rhythm of devotion that would not let her rest. She moved softly through the small house, careful not to wake them, and began her daily rituals of love. She pressed the iron across their wrinkled clothes, making each fold neat, even though no one ever noticed. She packed lunches with small touches, a slice of fruit, a neatly written note folded inside, words like, "Don't forget your dreams. I believe in you." Her hands were cracked and rough, yet every action was tender. At work later that day, her coworkers glanced at her worn-out shoes and faded handbag. Some smirked, whispering behind her back. She smiled politely, pretending not to notice, because she knew every penny saved went toward tuition, school supplies, and bills. Her sacrifices were invisible, but they were the foundation holding her children's world together. That evening, her children returned home, too busy with their phones and conversations to acknowledge her. She sat at the table alone, shadows crawling across the floor. Instead of scolding, she opened her journal and wrote, "Respect is not demanded. It is remembered." And so, she kept showing up, not with anger, but with quiet service. A repaired button on a shirt, a tank filled with gas, a blanket neatly folded on a chair. These small acts were seeds she planted silently, believing that one day they would bloom in her children's hearts, teaching them what words never could. Graduation day arrived, and the air buzzed with excitement. The hall was alive with flowers, cameras flashing, and the thunder of applause. Her eldest child stood tall, robed in a cap and gown, their smile radiant under the stage lights. Families filled the rows, calling out names, waving proudly, rushing to capture every second on their phones. She stood quietly at the very back, hidden behind taller parents, clutching her simple old phone, the cracked screen barely able to take a picture. Her dress was plain, her shoes worn, but her pride shone brighter than anything she wore. When the principal's voice echoed, calling for parents to stand in honor of the sacrifices that had brought these graduates this far, she hesitated. For a moment, she almost remained seated, unsure if she belonged among the polished suits and sparkling jewelry. Slowly, she rose, her heart swelling though her children's eyes skipped past her. They searched the crowd but did not see her, at least not the way she longed to be seen. After the ceremony, she lingered outside, watching from a distance as her children laughed and posed for pictures with friends. Not once did they call her over. Not once did they hand her the phone to stand beside them. Still, she clapped softly for them, whispering, "My pride is greater than my pain." As she turned to leave, a teacher approached, gently touching her arm. "Ma'am," the teacher said with a kind smile, "your child spoke of you today in class, told everyone they wouldn't be standing on that stage if it weren't for their mother." Her eyes filled with tears. Perhaps, just perhaps, the seeds she planted in silence were beginning to grow. Weeks later, one evening, her youngest came home later than usual. Their face looked pale, their shoulders slumped beneath the weight of unseen battles. She noticed the exhaustion instantly but didn't ask questions. Instead, she moved quietly, her hands steady as she set down a steaming bowl of soup on the table. She slid it forward with care and whispered gently, "Eat first, talk later." Her voice was calm, free of judgment, but filled with warmth. For a moment, the child hesitated, spoon suspended halfway. Then their eyes lifted slowly, meeting hers. In that silence, something shifted. For the first time in a long while, they didn't see her as just a background presence. They saw the steady flame, the quiet strength that had been holding their world together all along. Tears pricked their eyes, though they quickly looked down, ashamed. Later that night, the siblings sat together in hushed voices, memories rising like waves. They remembered her walking miles in heavy rain to attend parent meetings, her skipping meals so they could eat, her hands soothing their foreheads through sleepless nights. They realized how blind they had been, mistaking her silence for weakness, her calm for irrelevance. In truth, it had been her greatest strength. The guilt was heavy, but it was mixed with awakening. The next morning, before leaving for school, one child slipped a folded note under her pillow. On it were the words, "We see you now. We're sorry. Thank you for everything." When she discovered it, her hands trembled, her heart flooded with emotions she had buried for years. For the first time in so long, her tears were not born of loneliness, but of healing. Love had finally broken through. Months passed, and life carried on, but something in the air had changed. Another ceremony was approaching. This time for an award of achievement, not just for the children, but for families who had shown extraordinary perseverance. She arrived hesitantly, still in her plain dress, expecting once again to sit quietly at the back. But before she could slip into the shadows, her children spotted her. This time, they didn't look past her. They called out loudly, their voices echoing across the hall, "That's our mother. That's the woman who made us who we are." All eyes turned. She froze, overwhelmed, as her children rushed toward her. They draped a shawl around her shoulders, pressed flowers into her hands, and guided her to the very front. The audience rose to their feet in applause, not for the children's success alone, but for the mother whose sacrifices had made it possible. Her eyes brimmed with tears, her heart swelling with a mixture of disbelief and joy. One child leaned close, whispering, "You taught us that love doesn't shout, it endures. We'll never ignore you again." The cameras flashed, immortalizing the moment she had once only dreamed of. For the first time, she wasn't invisible, she was honored. As they walked home together, hand in hand, laughter filled the air, soft and healing. Her heart felt light, no longer burdened by silence. The voiceover fades with her smile, "Children may forget your words, but they will never forget your example. Stay calm. Love silently. Because one day, silence speaks louder than anger, and love always wins. Her story had come full circle. What was once unseen was now unforgettable.